I wanted to take over at this point in the interview. Now, here's where I got the call. And as I say, it looked as though, or it sounded to me as though this was going to be a very difficult situation. But, oh, I'm sorry, I'll try to remember. But Doris's financial situation wasn't the kind that would allow her to go through an expensive therapy. What I'm trying to explain to you is why we became so much involved in Doris's case. Not only that, she was bedridden. She was under the care of her mother at the time she called, not in her own home. She could no longer take care of herself. And there was no way we could find a doctor for her at that time who could come into her home and give instructions. So the burden fell on F.A.C.T. And of course, as I've said to you before, that we have never let a patient down. And we don't do this very often. Our preference is to refer the patients to the professional people. But we realized in this instance, either Doris got help directly from our organization or she wasn't going to get help at all. And so we began to give her help primarily via the telephone, and Doris was the person who usually made the call. But she was very fortunate that she was in a very good environment. Her husband was devoted. Her mother was caring and encouraging. Both of them were. I think her husband practically fed her by the teaspoonful when he got on the program. He did come into New York. She lives in Connecticut, by the way. And he had a very trying job, but he came into New York, into the office at the time, and we went through some of the books with him, and he, with very meager funds, I want you to know, he didn't hesitate buying the books that were suggested to him. And he read them carefully, and he understood the information that he was getting there, and he went back home to take care of Doris. There was another factor in her favor which she mentioned casually here, and that was her absolute faith. We talk about removing stress, we talk about changing attitude, and I think you cannot ignore the fact that because Doris was so sick, her attitude did not interfere with the healing process, which stress can do, uneasiness can do. Her faith in her religion, what was it, Doris?
I wanted Jehovah's Witnesses.
Jehovah's Witness. Her faith in her religion and God meant that whatever he had decided for her was going to be acceptable. She did not question it. Another thing that we liked in this situation was when later on, when she began to get out of bed and help herself and got back home, she was preparing her own food, and this is when I heard from her, and she says, I love the food I'm eating. So her life actually was as enjoyable as one could make it under those circumstances. Now, if we could give every one of the cancer patients we come across those three areas, faith that things will be all right, whether it's your faith in God, your Jehovah's Witness, or if we're not going to say people must have a faith in some formal religion. It's not absolutely necessary, but faith that your body can heal, faith that you were created with these healing properties, and to forget your cancer problem, but take care of your health. I think that would do people in good stead. I want Doris to complete. Now, this was where I came into the picture and why we participated in the situation. Now it's up to Doris to finish the story. Do you want to hold it?
Yeah. Well,
do it yourself.
I was unable to eat at this time, and it was difficult to feed me even juice. But I used a straw. I had a lot of help from my organization. Everyone had time each day, 2 at a time, but they had to handle me in a way of the pain was so severe that my husband, if he touched me, I would scream with the pain. he would drag me to the bathroom. They would suggest a wheelchair, and I said, no, I've got to use my legs. My legs need circulation, and it was the way I felt. I wanted to keep doing the right thing. Well, they had to feed me for quite a while. I couldn't even lift my hand up to my mouth. I was drinking combinations with carrot juice, and of course, at the time we were waiting for these papers from Mrs. Sackman. I had a friend that suggested to start because everyone was so scared that I wasn't going to live and have the strength. So they gave me the nutritional drink mixed in a blender of yogurt, ripe banana, frozen pineapple juice, digestive aids, bone meal, and kelp and brewer's yeast, and a small amount of honey to give it the taste. But of course, that was so little. It was like a 4-ounce glass at a time with the carrot juice. I'll just switched around on that. But anyway, so when Mrs. Sackman recommended to buy a Dr. Walker book on raw juices and some of the vegetable salads books. My husband constantly read what was supposed to be read. I couldn't absorb anything at that time. November 1975, I gradually was unable to tolerate much solid food. So eventually, then they started with the vegetable juices and the fruit juices, and then they started me with herbs and enzymes I had to take, and I drank my Concord grape juices. Now remember, friends, this worked for me. If I'm telling you what I had done, but it worked for me. Maybe, like I say, and we've learned during the convention, everyone is different. However, I was in such pain.
You're going through this whole thing.
No, I'm
we don't
not.
have
No.
the time for it.
No, I'm not. I just want to make sure that
And I want
they
to
realize
allow
that
some time for questions and answers.
I had to use a bedpan at the time that's showing all the weakness I had in my body. I just want to. But I had a lot of reactions. That's what I wanted to bring out.
Yeah.
I was surprised at first, but later grew to expect that that reactions took place. That made it seem that I was getting worse, but not better. I was concerned, and my husband got frightened many times, and my chest broke open again. That was frightening. Frightening things increased in pain, although my body, skin rashes were occurring, muscle spasms were unreal. They couldn't control my arm. Headaches, pain, back pain, elevated blood pressure, fever, disagreeable body odor, dark stools, hemorrhoids. The cramps in my legs were unreal that I couldn't cope with. Poor circulation and dizziness was occurring. But I was assured that through Mrs. Sackman, with my husband's calling, that this was a detoxification time, and that this was going to happen during this time of not to get alarmed over it. So in December of '75, I began to smile again, and I enjoyed my foods and beverages, and I was very happy to be alive. I looked around and said to my mom, I missed an awful lot in 3 years. Where was I at this time? So of course, then John said it. Around 1975. Again, I was repeating. At this time, on my neck, it seemed to disappear. The lump had slowly disappeared, and then I had to use a neck brace because I was in a severe car accident before my operations. Before I realized I needed this operation. So of course I had to use that, and that affected me right away. So I was detoxifying constantly, and with the help of alternative cancer, it was so encouraging to get through this. And friends, I could give you so much more, but time doesn't permit me to. But I'm sorry, but my story is in one of our alternative cancer form, and you can read detail of my story. But one main thing is that my case, I feel that helped through Mrs. Sackman. Of course, Mrs. Sackman will say half of it was me.
90%.
No, I said 90%. But I still give alternative cancer a great credit to it, because I wouldn't be here if it wasn't. And it's what makes you happy is Proverbs 17:22. A heart that is joyful does good as a cure.
Very good.